All right. Welcome back to WTF Menopause, and I'm here with Gaia Morrissette, and we're going to talk about sexual wellness during menopause. And this is a huge topic, and we're only going to scratch the surface of that today, but I hope to get the conversation started so that we can all feel more empowered to take back our control of our sexual wellness. So thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast, Gaia. I'm so grateful you took the time to be here.
Oh, I'm excited. I love this conversation. So I love this topic, and it's such an important one for us to have as women and for partners. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, there's so much that we can unpack, but we have a limited amount of time, so we'll have to keep it focused. But there's so many different episodes. We probably will have more conversations in the future.
Yes.
We couldn't do it all right at once.
Yeah.
But before we get into the topic at hand, let's talk a little bit about your background. So how did you become a holistic sexual wellness specialist?
So everybody always asks me that question, and I have a really juicy story for it. So I didn't pick this career picked me. And, it was like it was my destiny, whether I wanted it to be or not. So let's go back in time.
Should we start doing the fade?
So when I was about 14, 15 years old, my mom brought me to this women's gathering. And I was like, oh, these women are weird. Like, where are the boys, right? I was like, these women are weird. Like, Mom, what are you doing? So I went and hid from all these women, right? So I'm like hiding in the basement, and I'm reading my book, minding my own business. And this woman walks into the basement. She must have been in her late 60s, early 70s. And she just blurts out of her mouth, I've never had an orgasm. And in that moment, I felt like that had been the worst thing I had ever heard. I remember this feeling of just complete sadness for her. And a normal 14-year-old girl, though, is not supposed to respond that way. She's supposed to be like, why are you telling me that? That's disgusting, right? La, la, la. Like, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. But I didn't. I had already experienced orgasm at that point in my life. And so I went over, I put my book down, went over, I gave her a hug, and she started crying, and she said, it's too late. And I said, it's never too late. And I proceeded to teach her that how she could have an orgasm through masturbation. That was the moment that I answered the call of destiny, whether I didn't realize that was what was happening, but that's the moment that changed my life forever. After that moment, I couldn't go anywhere without people talking to me about sex and sexuality and trauma and abuse and their deep, dark secrets. And it was like, no matter where I went, I mean, I could be standing at the bus stop. Somebody would start talking to me about stuff. I would, be minding my own business, and somebody started talking to me about stuff. And so, fast forward, I finally was like, all right, fine. Fine. All right, this is what I'm going to do. Right? It was mostly, I really answered the call when I was, I guess 12 years ago, full time. Mm-hmm. And because it was like, now I had business cards and boundaries. It was like quite lovely, actually, because when people would start talking to me about stuff, I say, I lovingly want to support you, but right now it's not appropriate. Here's my card, book an appointment. And so I really, that's basically the story, that's how I happened to end up doing what I do.
That's incredible. What a story to have with somebody in that age, as a 14-year-old, with somebody in that age group, and then have that. My brain can't wrap around that my own self as a 14-year-old, talking to somebody in that age about what to do and all this stuff. So it definitely, what a story, and what an amazing story to help someone. And obviously you're helping other people as you've gone along. So what kind of education or training do you have to do to kind of do this work?
So I have, my background is in psychology and working with abused women and children and tantra and lots of sexual education stuff. And lots of experience and my own healing and my own experience in life. For everybody who's like, I need to mention my age because I don't look my age. So often when I start talking, people are like, but you're so young. How do you even know this stuff?
What are you, 12?
What are you, 12? Like, really? What are you talking about? So I'm 45. So I just want everybody to know. See? Look at the shock on your face.
Are you kidding? Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Yes. And so
that's what happens when you're living your best life and you're getting all kinds of good, juicy stuff going on, right?
Exactly. This is what keeps me nice and young. Laughter and orgasm, baby. Laughter and orgasm.
I think I have some work to do.
The more orgasms you have, the more your age reversal. Age reversal.
I think I'm going to have to test that theory.
All right.
So you were saying that your training, I think you were.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I have all this educational background, which actually I never use.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the stuff that I ever use.
Right.
There's only one thing that I actually ever used from any of my schooling. It's paraphrasing, and that's about it. Right?
Yeah.
The rest of it has all been about my own journey and being in that space. And I'm incredibly intuitive, so there's that dropping into those places. And so I just hold space, and I'm the container for what people need and how they need to hear it.
Mm-hmm. So then, have you had experience or any experience with any pre or perimenopause or anything like that yourself?
I'm starting to go into the pre-menopause.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at, but I have a lot of clients and I've worked with a lot of women who have gone through that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you define sexual wellness?
So sexual wellness is, I look at sexuality wellness as a mind, body, and spirit connection. So in the center of it is who you are as a sexual being. And who you are as a sexual being affects your mind, body, and spirit. And I found that sexual wellness is really broken up into like 5 aspects. There's play, sensuality, sexuality, exploration, and the sacred. And each one of those aspects, we lean in and we learn a different we learn more about ourselves. We learn to surrender. We learn to embrace pleasure. We learn to have safety. We learn communication. We learn, how to come to this place of unconditional love and acceptance for who we are and ourselves, and being able to share that with our partner or partners, depending on what lifestyle you lead, and how through the body is how we reach higher states of consciousness and we connect to kind of the more divine aspects of, humanness and sexuality, right? So it's a very large, it's more than just about having sex, enjoying it, and having orgasms. I mean, that's just the basics, but it's sexuality and sexual wellness is looking at that holistic approach to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really key. And I think one of my experience anyway has been that the older I've gotten, the more you kind of focus on some of those things, because you can't always expect that your body's going to respond the way it has been in the past or has, historically worked. And so you kind of have to dig a little deeper and look at a different way. And even something that I even started doing recently, which kind of surprised me, is just like meditating on my sensuality and my sexuality. And when I say that to people in some of the groups that I'm in for menopause and stuff, they look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, well, how much do you really want to know? Because I could tell you, but are you ready to hear it? I guess is the question.
Well, and that piece leads into like one of the things that I find that in this realm of talking about sexual wellness within menopause and around menopause is before we, our hormones change, our arousals change, our libido's changing, and how do we navigate that? And one of the things is that we need to define what makes up sexual arousal. What are the ingredients to sexual arousal? So there's the physical aspect, which is our hormones. There's the psychological and emotional aspect, which is our brain and our thoughts and our feelings, and how happy we are, and how we like sex or don't like sex, and what are our sexual beliefs, and are we carrying shame and all of that place. And then the third one is what you're talking about, is that I call it the spiritual, or the energy, right? The sexual energy. And so when we're going through this menopausal change, our hormonal levels changing. So we take one of the three ingredients out of the arousal, but that leaves us two. And that leaves us two to like really lean into and dig into and, find this new form of arousal, new form of being horny, new form of sexual gratification. And the truth is that the reason that we feel, for so many women in particular, feel like there's like they've lost, there's like this emptiness, there's this loss, there's this grieving that happens, is that my arousal has died, my libido has died. It's because we've only ever been allowed to really embrace the one aspect, which is the physical one. Right. So when that one wanes or changes or, is different, we don't know what to do or how to connect to our sexuality and our pleasure and all of these things.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I completely have gone through some of that arc and understand that a lot more now with just my own experience. And it's really interesting. And and at the same time, it's a really weird place for me to be in. Like, I have this information, but do I share it with other people? Because it's not, everybody's complaining that they either don't like sex anymore, or they don't want to have it with their partner, or their partner is, insisting that they're frigid or that they're unavailable, and all the friction that happens there. And yet it's like, I feel like I have this, in you too, we have this gift that we can share. And it's like, but it feels like there's definitely a cultural taboo around talking about some of these things as well. But I think that we need to break that, because otherwise we're going to have a lot of unhappy women, just like that one woman you first talked to,
Yeah.
It's not fair. It's not right.
No, it's not. It's like, and that, I think that's that other piece around, when we are allowed as women, because culturally we're not allowed to embrace our sexuality
healthily,
in a healthy way at any age, right? Whether we're young, we're in the middle, we're in our later stages of life, it doesn't matter. As a woman, from a societal standpoint, North American society anyways, culturally, that we aren't really allowed to fully own it and embrace it. And that source of connection to who we are as a sexual being is the power that is our source of where we can create everything in our world, how we can support the people in our lives, that energy, that creativity, that passion, the excitement, like all of these pieces come from that place of being okay and loving your body and allowing yourself to believe that you deserve to have pleasure. And I'm not talking about orgasmic pleasure. I'm just talking about pleasure in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Sorry, I went off.
I totally get. I'm a trained sociologist, so we could talk about that for hours. So.
Right. So I think that's a big reason why there's this like panic and such disconnect when women are going into the next phase of their life, because there hasn't been a really healthy relationship with their genitals, with their body, with their sexuality, with their desire, with their pleasure, with any of these things. This is before we go into where hormonal changes are happening.
Right. Right.
So when you go into the hormonal changes, you're like, oh my God.
Now all hell is just broken loose.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the vagina gets closed for business.
Right. In a lot of ways. Yeah.
You know, and it even manifests in physiologically
Mhm.
in being closed for business.
Right.
Atrophy, not juiciness, pain, all these things start to happen
Right.
because we're disconnected from it. It doesn't have to happen. And I think that's the beautiful thing, is that it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen that way. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this horrible experience. You know, I've talked to, you know, some incredible women who've been part of my mentorship of, you know, guiding me through my journey in life, who are older than me. And they were like, menopause was easy for them. Like they were really, as they moved into it, they embraced it. They did the things that they needed to do to stay connected, to awaken, to all those things. They're having way more sex and having more orgasms than they ever had in their lives. Because they're like, now I don't have to worry about babies.
Right. I think that's the best part.
So do we want to talk about that? Do we want to talk about that piece of it? Like, how do we keep our vaginas juicy and
Yeah,
happy?
absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about that. Because I know that's one of the big, I mean, and if you want to even go into some of the challenges that you've had, or not the challenges, but what you've worked with women and their challenges and how you've helped them kind of get past some of those. So one of them is definitely going to be physically open for business.
Yeah. That's usually the number one thing that's going on in my clients that come to see me. There's pain, you know, there's atrophy, there's dryness, there's like the vagina is not a happy camper and does not open for business on any level.
Oh,
So a couple of different things that, you know, we can start to do just on a physiological level, right? So there's things around, you know, getting certain supplements that resonate with you. You know, you got, you know, wild yam, you know, there's a bunch of different ones that, you know, leaning into that, you know, having your practitioner. Like, I think it's really important as you go into this that you have, you know, your doctors and your naturopaths and your homeopaths and like the, you know, people who specialize in this to give you the extra boost and support that you need with supplements. I mean, that's not my area of expertise. So, but that there are supplements and creams and lotions and potions and all sorts of stuff to start to keep your levels and your balance and help you go through that process easier, right?
right.
You know, making lube your friend, you know, like it's okay to have, like, sex shouldn't be painful. And if if it is painful, there's a couple different reasons. Psychologically, you're not really aroused enough for the experience. Emotionally, you're not there. Physiologically, you're you know, things aren't juicy and moving. You know, there's stuff maybe going on in your relationship and your partnership that you're feeling disconnected. So, you know, your vagina's like, I ain't coming to play with him. I don't really like him right now. Like there's all sorts of reasons why these things might be going on for you. And I got all off on a tangent here. What were we talking about? Oh,
So just how to help, get through it. Get to
how to move through the process, right?
yeah.
So first thing is making friends with Kegels.
Okay.
All right. Kegels help to create circulation and juiciness.
Okay.
The more Kegels you do, the happier vagina is, both physiologically, energetically, and emotionally. Because it also helps to ground us too. right? Especially if you do this with breathing, right?
Yeah.
So before we end our session today, if you can remind me to take us through some Kegel exercises so that everybody can kind of have some fun with it, that would be
Absolutely.
fantastic. You're writing that down?
Yeah, because I am in perimenopause and memory is not always 100%.
Okay, so doing Kegels is a great way to create that juiciness. Lube is another great way to create that juiciness. There are now lubes on the market that are really, they've been exploring around having some of those things like wild yams and some other supplements in there that'll help to create more elasticity and has estrogen in it and create that space, right? CBD oils, they're doing, they've done some really cool stuff with that, so that might be something to be looking into, from the lube department. I don't know, where are you in Canada? Where are you?
I'm actually in the States. I'm in Michigan.
Okay, so in Canada, it's all, our whole pot and CBD and all this stuff's become it's become legal here. So they've been doing a lot of research now that, it's legal to do it. Right. So, I would really lean into that. There's some pretty cool stuff that's coming out from that. Let's see, what other things? Okay. So that's the big pieces of helping your vagina stay juicy.
Okay.
Now, you need to be turned on.
Yeah. Kind of important.
It's an important piece.
Yeah.
And there's so many pleasure possibilities and awakening in the rest of your body, not just your vaginal canal. There's your clitoris, there's your nipples, there's your hair, you can learn to have eargasms and nosegasms and toegasms, and you can learn to be fully orgasmic in your whole entire body.
So when you say orgasms, no orgasms, you're talking about by stimulating just that part of your body, you actually achieve orgasm.
There's two different kinds of orgasmic releases that happen. There's the general, so like if I'm touching this part of my body, there's all these nerve endings because there's erogenous zones in different parts of our bodies, right? And there's a cluster of nerves that are closest to the surface. And those nerves are not as concentrated as, say, at your clitoris, but there's a cluster, so it's concentrated. So you can learn how to stimulate that part of your body and have a localized pleasure release, orgasmic release in that spot. But you can also train your body and your brain, because it's all wiring, right? To connect this being like, this is just as orgasmic as anything that has ever happened in my vagina, and allow that to be a possibility. When you allow that to be a possibility, what happens is that your vagina also can have an orgasmic release at the same time as you have this localized space.
Okay, I see.
Right, so like orgasmic release is a build-up of so much pleasure stimuli that your body has no choice but to have a release. It's almost like an explosion of sorts. And so that can happen in any part of our body. That's why people who have mobility issues or no feeling in their genitals can still have a very active and a great orgasmic life, because we can just train other parts of our body to respond.
Okay.
So that's the other piece of it, is that you want to shift out of the focus of intercourse and penetration as the focus of your sexual satisfaction for you and your partner. Penetration can happen, and you can work up to that, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with that. But the point is that that's only one tiny little drop in the bucket of pleasure orgasmic possibilities.
Which is probably blowing a lot of people's mind right now, right? Because that's not something we think about or we even understand.
Yeah. Yes, often when I say this, they're like, what? You're lying to us, Gaia. That's not true. I remember a friend of mine, funny story about that. I had a friend of mine who I taught, she was at one of my workshops, and I was dropping into like having full body orgasms and nipple-gasms and toe-gasms and nose-gasms. And she's like, afterwards, she's like, you're so full of shit. Like, there's no way that even is a possibility. I'm like, it is. Here's some tools to practice that.
Yeah.
Pleasure awareness, sensory awareness, this will help to heighten it and stuff like that. So like 2 years goes by. She calls me up. She's like, you're not going to believe it. I just had an orgasm from eating a burrito. She's like, the burrito was warm in my hand, and there was some guacamole that just kind of dripped down my wrist, and I licked up the guacamole, and she's like, and I had an orgasm right there. Said, I told you.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
So this world is so much bigger, so much bigger than your hormonal arousal response that are localized in your genitals.
Right, right. So I have a quick question. So when you work with women in your practice, do you work with women alone, or do you work with their partners as well, or is it both, or how does that work? Just out of curiosity.
So it depends on what's needed, right? And what the purpose is, right? Like, are we working on their sex? Is the person coming to see me because they want to have a better sexual relationship with themselves? Do they just want to have awakening of their body? Are we healing trauma? Like, what are we doing, right?
Yeah.
But often, if in partnership, I love when couples come see me. So that way, often what happens is that the couples come see me. I usually work with the couples individually for most of the work. And then we only have a couple sessions usually of them together. And it's just to help them navigate, communicate, like change some stuff that may not be working in the relationship. But because each person, and this is kind of a foundational belief that I have, is that your relationship with yourself, your sexual relationship with yourself, is the foundation for your sexual relationship with others. Not the other way around. We've kind of been taught that our partners are the ones who are supposed to unleash and awaken us as a sexual being. And the problem is that creates a lot of expectations and codependency and frustrations and performance anxiety, and like all sorts of things happen in that. And so when we go on this self-discovery space, and we heal and we release and we work and we figure out what it is in the safety of the containment that is us, then we can come whole and complete into our relationship with our partner. And we can be like, and we can show them and we can teach them and we can tell them what we discovered that we like and how our body likes to be touched and how we like to, what we like before that turns us on, and how do our bodies like to be taken care of afterwards, and all of these things we can't teach and share with our partners if we don't know what it is.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so when couples come see me, we usually, like I said, both of them come see me to work on their own stuff, and they have these separate relationships to heal their stuff with themselves. And then they come back together much stronger. And the stuff that we have to work on is very minimal, because it's more about the stuff that we bring, the baggage that we carry within to our relationship causes a lot of the problems that we have in our relationship. So when we clean that baggage up and we clear that baggage up, we're walking in a new way, and it's much easier to navigate that within the relationship.
For sure. I think that goes with everything, right? We just have to be in a better place ourselves. I guess, okay. I have like 5 questions going on, and they're all competing for the same space in my head. But let's go into, just because I know this is something that I hear in the menopause space as well, there's a lot of traumatic sexual experiences, either because of the loss of, the hormones and the inability to experience sex the way they used to, and, the way we look at it, like you were saying. There's physical pain, there's a partner who may be upset and maybe pushing, and so there's some emotional pain, some psychological trauma, maybe because there's arguments and uh, conflict there. There's that self-induced guilt and shame because we feel like now we're not an equal part of that relationship because our bodies aren't behaving in the same way they used to. So there's I think there's a multi-layer trauma happening in the menopause transition in this space, because we just either don't understand what's going on, trying to understand but aren't getting very far, or we're just completely so overwhelmed, or in some cases we just don't care because our bodies are like, we just feel so foreign to ourselves in this space. So what can we do to kind of help get through some of this trauma in a way that's gonna, and it doesn't mean that you have to have sex at the end of this, healing, but whatever is best for us. How do we work through some of those issues? That's huge, I know.
That's a huge one. Thanks for that.
I'm grateful.
Making me have to bring my A game.
Right.
Okay, so let's pull that apart a little bit. So let's start talking about, well, how do we navigate the relationship distress that is being created with going through menopause? And I think that's a big one. So the first part is to start having open dialogues in your relationship.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one. And talking to your partner about, okay, so I'm going through menopause. There's a whole lot of changes that are happening. I would like you to be on my team, my A team of support throughout this process. Right. And this is what, I'm learning about my body, and this is what I'm learning about what I need. And, I'm going to make a commitment to, I'm not promising that we may have the same kind of sex, or that, that I'm even feeling overly sexual right now as I'm kind of navigating all of this. But I do make a promise to work on being connected and having intimacy with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest problem, is that for men, and not all men, so, whoever identifies as male, all right, that their ability to connect on an intimacy level is through their physical sexual contact. And so what ends up happening often is that when the female partner of the relationship is going through menopause, as is sorting out all that's going on in the shifting and the changing, she pulls away. One, because she doesn't really know what's going on, and two, she's not communicating what's going on. So there's a disconnect on the communication front, and there's a disconnect on the physical connection front.
Mm-hmm.
And so the partner feels like abandoned and is like totally lost, and is afraid to approach it because he loves his partner and doesn't want to be a jerk. Mm-hmm. But he's also, because she's going through her own space, but he's also hurting and feeling empty and lost, and doesn't know what's going on, and how to, what is he supposed to do? What is he not supposed to do? What is he allowed to do? What is he not allowed to do? So I think the problem is that you have two people who were connected all of a sudden become incredibly disconnected from each other. Mm-hmm. And the way to start to heal that is to have the dialogue that this is what's happening, and people starting to make having some conversations around negotiation of like, how are we going to navigate this together so that we can still maintain intimacy and closeness.
Mm-hmm.
And really each person defining, well, what does intimacy mean for each one, and what does closeness mean for each one of those, and where can we meet in the middle around that, right? So it may not be like, hey, we're gonna have some crazy sex from the chandeliers, but it could mean doing some sensual massage and being in connected to each other through some pleasure in the body with some oils and some music and some feathers and textures and things like that. That is still that physical intimacy and moving out of it. So that's one piece of it. The secondary piece is to move out of the normal sequence of sex. So I think that's the other part of that talk, is to say, okay, we need to come up with a new definition of what sexuality looks like for us now.
Yeah.
And this is good for a relationship that as you're growing older together, because, the female may be going through menopause, but eventually he's going to go through some stuff around his erections and his penis and his bodies and hips and body parts, and may not be able to get the same positions and all sorts of stuff. So letting go of what the expectation of what our sex life is supposed to look like, and creating a new space and a new exciting space of exploration is a great way where you guys can bond as a couple together, because we're now going on an adventure. It's like that same kind of adventure as like when we were virgins and we didn't know what we're doing, right? It's like this new form. It's like, different parts of your bodies are going to be more responsive than others, and your body is changing. So let's discover what that looks like together, and be excited together about it and talking about it. So if those things happen, this is where things get healed. And this is where you become going from this disconnect from each other to like, we're on an adventure together. We're back to being adventure buddies. We're on this journey to connect together. Right? Now, that being said, you may not have had those conversations, and so that might not be where you're at. All right, so let's just be honest. Oh, that's great, Gaia. If I had done that in the beginning, things would have been better.
Yeah.
Yes, but you didn't, and that's okay. So what do we do now? All right, so now we still have to have that conversation. We still have to drop in and say, hey, all right, so let's have a real honest conversation about our connection, our intimacy, and sexuality and pleasure. I'm like, because you're not happy, I'm not happy, and the way that it's going, no one's a happy camper. So let's lean into this and let's have this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the third thing is, if you try to have that conversation, because it's a hard conversation to navigate if it's not your wheelhouse. Okay. Right. I know I make it sound really easy, but this is because this is my wheelhouse. All right. So please reach out to me, to somebody like me that can help navigate this within your relationship. You don't have to do it by yourself. Right. You don't have to have all the answers. You can be like, hey, are you happy? All you have to do is turn to your partner. Hey, you happy with her sex life? Partner's going to be like, no. You okay with us going to see somebody to fix that? Most partners are going to be like, yep. All right, let's go do that. Right? You don't even have to go in beyond that. Because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff here. And there's a lot of stuff that existed if you had past trauma, if you have sexual trauma, you have relationship stuff, sexual beliefs around that are, shame. Like there's a lot of stuff that's in this. So if you can't do it, it's okay. That's why there's people like me to help you through that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're we've had a good conversation here. We could go for a lot longer, but we're going to have to come back because there's definitely a lot more to talk about. But I do have one last question that I like to ask all of my guests.
Okay.
And that is to help leave our listeners with some concrete action to take. And that is, in your opinion, what are 3 small steps that we can take right now to help in our menopausal journey?
So this is perfect. Kegels, because we
Oh,
were going to come back. We're going to do Kegels. So we're going to do Kegels. Change what your belief system is around what is sex. Redefine that sex goes from a systematic, like you kiss, maybe have oral sex, then you have intercourse. So hopefully everybody has an orgasm, and then you go to sleep. Okay, that system is no longer, even if, and to be honest, it really didn't work very well in the first place. There's like so much more, right? So like let go of that attachment to that, to drop into, oh, I want to be exploratory and I'm inquisitive and curious, right? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is have a conversation with your partner. Okay. All right. So let's come back to the Kegels. All right. So Kegels. Kegels are named after the guy who found the PC muscles, the pelvic floor muscles that, keep everything in, keep all our bits inside. Right. Sorry?
I said keeping us from turning inside out.
Exactly. Right. So doing Kegels, no matter what age you are, it's important. And doing Kegels, whether you're male or female, whether you're the owner of vaginas or penises, it doesn't matter. Everybody should be doing Kegels, okay? Right? Because this will help with your health, overall physical health. So from a menopausal place, it's going to help create blood flow, circulation, juiciness. And when you start doing them, you'll start to like them, and it'll even start to have tingles. Right? This will help to kind of like, ooh, I'm feeling something down south. And the nice thing about Kegels is you can do them anytime, anywhere, and no one knows you're doing them.
That's right.
Okay? All right. So we're going to just do a basic Kegel. If you have heard of Kegels and you know all about Kegels, you can get really fancy with them. But let's just start with the basics, okay? All right. So I want you to squeeze. So you're going to squeeze. Right now, you're just going to kind of squeeze all of your genital region. So you got your anus, your vaginal canal. You're going to kind of squeeze it all the way up to your belly button. And then you're going to hold it. And then you're going to exhale. And you're going to relax the muscles. And then you're going to push your anus out a little bit. Pushing your anus out, what that does is it resets our muscles. Often when we're doing Kegels, there's been this belief that we're all walking around with really loose vaginas, and that's why we're supposed to be doing our Kegels. That's not true. Actually, most of us are in hypertension mode, and our vaginas are way too tight. Right?
Oh.
Okay, so pushing the anus out is going to help to reprogram what the reset is, so that you're, instead of doing this, you're able to go and do the full range of motion.
Okay.
And we want to do this with breathing. So breathing in, squeezing, holding, exhaling, relaxing, push out. All right, again. Breathe in, squeeze, hold, exhale, relax, push out. All right. Now, Tracy, when you're squeezing, I see your whole body going like this.
I know. I kind of like feel like I'm sucking myself into it.
Which means that you're going too hard, too strong. You're not trying to crack a coconut, okay?
You know, I always have to go all in, right?
We're looking for like a gentle squeeze. Not
Not like, oh,
okay.
okay.
Not like this.
So relax,
Just
people.
gentle squeeze. All right. So let's try this again. All right. First of all, let's move our body, shake it off. All right. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Breathe in, squeeze, hold. That's better. Exhale, relax, and push out. Let's do 2 more of those now that we're doing it from a relaxed state. Breathe in and squeeze. Hold, exhale, relax. And one more time. Breathe in, squeeze, hold, relax. Push out. All right. How you feel?
Okay, pretty relaxed.
How's your vagina feeling?
Pretty good. Not too tingly yet, but we'll
It's
work.
all right. You got to work at it. So you want to work up to doing 100 of those a day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. And I recommend you doing 10 sets of 10. So don't do a longer set than 10. All right. We don't want to tire out, overuse, overwork our vaginal muscles. I don't want to it's like going to the gym. I don't want to get any angry messages. Guy, you broke my vagina, it's sore. Because I did 100 in one sitting. All right. So
oh my gosh, yeah, for sure.
go slow. And the best thing to do to remember to do your Kegels, there's a couple of different Kegel apps that you can get for your phone.
Oh, cool.
That have different funny things, and find one that resonates with you. I have my Kegels attached to every time I'm standing in the line, and every time I hit a red light, I do 10 Kegels. And so throughout my day, I'm doing stuff, right? And so it allows me to do Kegels all the time. And the reason I picked going in the line is I used to hate being in lines. Now I'm probably the happiest, most relaxed person in a line because I'm squeezing my vagina. You should see me going through customs.
Definitely makes a different experience getting through the line, for sure.
It does. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. So we've had a great conversation. How do people get in touch with you to continue that conversation?
So the best way to get a hold of me is you can find me at my website, which is succulentliving.com. You can follow me on all the social media platforms under Gaia Morrissette. And you can come listen to my podcast, which is called My Orgasmic Life. Now, I will warn you, it's pretty wild. So I always have content warning. So read the content warning before you press play, okay? Just as a warning.
No playing around children.
Yeah, do not play around kids. And you can find me on all the social media or on all your favorite platforms, podcast platforms, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, all the places.
Awesome. And we'll definitely have those links in the show notes too, so it'll be easier for people to find.
Beautiful.
Again, thank you so much. It's been such a fun time, and I just know everyone is going to learn something new and hopefully expand their horizons when it comes to their sexual wellness and navigating it with menopause, because it is so important at this stage. And I really, I just can't thank you enough for being willing to be here with us.
It was my pleasure, and I had a great chat. And you know, if you want to dive in deeper into any other aspect of this, we got so much more we can go. You know where to find me.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, we'll talk to you next week.